If in 5 years' time, kids enjoy our Academator app and robot tutors whilst getting good grades, I'd be more than happy. Then we'll come to the government and tell them, look, you spend $6,000 of taxpayers' money per pupil per year. Using our algorithms and methodology, we could halve that. I want to make quality private tuition available at very low cost, almost zero. What I'm saying when I'm saying that people are not scalable, the best tutors are not scalable. You can't clone them. And in the end, robot tutors will be teaching robot kids. No need for humans at all.
That's going on at the start of the podcast. That is. Hello and welcome to the Qualified Tutor podcast, the podcast that brings you the latest in the world of tutoring, edtech and education, and hopefully inspires in you the big change that each and every one of us is capable of. Qualified Tutor is an industry-leading tutor training organisation and online tutoring community for thousands of tutors around the world. This podcast is the voice of this community, where we aim to hear from tutors, teachers, entrepreneurs, coaches, business experts, students, tutorpreneurs, and more from the world of tutoring about what inspires them every day, how they can help tutors like you, and what they've learnt about tutoring along the way. The question is, what will you learn today? Hello and welcome to the next episode of the Qualified Tutor podcast, and a huge welcome to Kirill Slavin. Welcome, Kirill. How are things going today?
Thank you very much for having me. It's an honor being on your podcast.
And it's an honor for us to welcome you on as well. As a little introduction to Kirill, it would be strange of us just to dive straight into the question without you listeners, knowing a little bit about Kirill. So, in truth, Kirill is not someone who's afraid to stay ahead of the curve. Kirill is the founder of multiple machine learning-driven tech startups and has built up a high-level approach to strategy, to finance, to edtech, really. And we'll be lucky today if we're able to pick Kirill's brain a little bit on how these three things interact. So I could introduce Kirill through his impressive CV of past positions held and teams led, but I know that Kirill would prefer to look forwards, as he has always done in his business. So, Kirill, I'm going to ask you something just before we dive into the first question. I'm going to ask you something I've never actually asked on this podcast before, which is, what are you, as the guest, looking forward to about today's conversation?
Right. Bounce ideas of an intelligent person. That's one. And also to evangelize our ideas. That's because I believe that those ideas are great, and I'd like them to be known to as many people as possible.
Okay. Well, let's see how far this podcast can go then. As many people as possible is a good aim to go for. So thank you for the little compliment you slipped in there as well. But we're going to dive into the first question. Well, now the second question, Kirill, which is, what is your why?
What drives me is very, very simple. Lots of children need extra tuition, which is inevitably private tuition. And only 10% of the population can afford that. I want to make quality private tuition available at very low cost, almost zero. And the only way to achieve it is to replace tutors with machines, at least partially. Humans are not scalable. Machines are. Software is eating the world. I see the world where each and every kid can download our app, push the start button, and the app will deliver the same results as a private tutor, or even better. So that's why.
Okay, that's quite a mission. That's a mission. Can you unpack that phrase a little bit further? Humans are not scalable, robots are.
tutors are inevitably part of some sort of statistical distribution in terms of their skills, in terms of their results. So, what I'm saying when I'm saying that people are not scalable, the best tutors are not scalable. You can't clone them. So the best tutors will always be best tutors, and mediocre tutors will be mediocre tutors. So, but with machines, it's different. You can clone machines, you can clone algorithms, you can copy and paste. So at the same price. And the more copy and paste, the lower the price. So which is not the case for humans.
Okay. So you're putting out you're setting out your stall for the case for robot tutors, and as part of that, along comes the beautifully named Academator or Academator, depending on how you see it, either more towards Arnold Schwarzenegger's Terminator or more towards a slant on Academia and Mate. I won't go into that in too much detail, Kirill, but Academator, Academator. What is this? This is your new business. Why now? Why Academator now?
Historically, we started as a community project in North London for kids that were falling behind during the first lockdown. And we, in our infinite wisdom, in inverted commas, we thought that if we aggregate and curate the whole gamut of free self-study content that is available online, we'll save the children. Surprise, surprise, that didn't work. The problem is that the kids, however good the content is, just can study on their own without a tutor or a parent nagging them. And we thought that we would transform this annoying nagging from a stick that punishes to some sort of a carrot. Why now? People always wanted to make self-study psychologically addictive. Lots of stuff is addictive. Gambling, computer games, opioids, social media, but not studying. Why? No tools until very recently. Now we have tools developed, for example, by Cambridge Analytica to manipulate people's attention. Now we have tools developed by Dominic Cummings' team to manipulate people's decisions. By the way, which British politician's blog do they read in the Silicon Valley? I gave myself away, obviously, yes. It's Dominic Cummings. It's the only one, because it's the only one who is clever by Silicon Valley standards. So there are lots of clever attention-grabbing tools from Facebook R&D and TikTok R&D. What is left is to apply those tools to self-study algorithms so that to make self-study addictive. And kids will be glued to the screens, blasting through mock exam questions at the speed of sound. So that's what's possible now. It was not possible 5 years ago.
Why? Because of the rise of these short-form social media apps?
Because 5 years ago, all those attention-grabbing algorithms and engagement algorithms, some people say addiction algorithms, I would say engagement algorithms, they were in development, in sort of testing mode, when, for example, Dominic Cummings was leading the campaign for Brexit. And when TikTok appeared, and TikTok was trying to bump Facebook off with their own engagement algorithms, which are very, very different from Facebook, by the way. So it was all in testing mode, and it was hush-hush. But now it's available, freely available, and anyone can use it. So,
okay, there's two questions percolating in my mind. It's about 1,000 questions in here, but your latest response showed me that perhaps you don't even need me. Perhaps and myself, the host of the QT podcast, can just be replaced by an AI clone of Kirill Slavin, who answers the questions that Kirill asks. So really what I want to know is how you see tutors, human tutors, fitting into the model of Academator. And we can come at this from two angles, but perhaps that's the first question. How do you see human tutors fitting the Academator structure?
Yes, this is a very good question. This is a very good question, actually. And we don't need to reinvent the wheel when thinking about this question, because we could just look at other industries. And a really good one to look at would be high street banking. Just look at high street banking, for example. What happened when machines started to replace people? Firstly, ATMs replaced lots of cashiers, but that was only the beginning. Now we don't have decision makers interacting with customers anymore. We don't have branch managers in the old sense, branch managers who could decide something. We don't have managers that are authorized to do anything beyond helping you to fill in the forms. Machines make decisions on mortgages, credit cards, and unsecured loans. Humans just feed the machines with A, content, and B, content delivery methods. Also, it has become easier to become an entry-level employee at a bank because everything is automated. The employee doesn't even need to think, just to follow computer prompts. The same thing will happen to the tutors. The best tutors will be the content creators for the machines. They will be building the best content, testing it, fine-tuning it, and also working on the delivery algorithms. Entry-level tutors will be fulfilling a different task. The great automation will widen the audience for private tuition by making it affordable. And from time to time, however good the machines are, a friendly human face will be in demand. But with automation, those newly minted tutors once need to build their own content, for example. They could sit, relax, smile, allow the machine to do the job, and just build the rapport with the pupil and the parents and collect the money, of course. So the analogy with the banking is that some tutors will become high-ranked risk managers, so to say, and some relaxed cashiers. So that's what will happen with the tutoring profession, I think.
For those of you who know the Love Tutoring Festival, you'll be delighted to hear that we're back! From Monday the 24th to Friday the 28th of January 2022, the Love Tutoring Festival will return, bigger and better than ever. For those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, you're in for a real treat. The most loved festival in tutoring, the Love Tutoring Festival is a 5-day online celebration of all things tutoring. With some of the biggest names in tutoring, education and pedagogy, and hundreds of committed and motivated tutors from all 4 corners of the globe taking part, it really is the biggest party in tutoring. We will again be working on a freemium ticket model this year, with all events totally free, apart from our famous and ludicrously inexpensive CPD accredited workshops. You can find out more, including the confirmed speakers so far, how to grab your place, and key information on our wonderful sponsors at qualifiedtutor.org/Love Tutoring Festival. Let's raise standards in tutoring together. Okay, so the scope and essentially the job description of tutors may shift slightly in order to allow a greater accessibility of tutoring by the student, by the parent body.
It is hard to say this is a chicken and egg in a sense. What's primary, what's secondary? But just I agree.
So, what kind of skills do you think the tutors of today, of 2021, should be equipping themselves with in order to fit a future like this?
Well, I think that these are the skills that best tutors have had all their lives, like creating the content. So if you look at, I'm myself, I'm a maths tutor. So and maths tutors throughout the tutoring career, they collect lots and lots of content. So what they do, they take some textbooks like Pearson's or Bond's, and then they create something of their own, which is better. So, and it takes time. It takes an awful lot of time. So I think I've never seen really good tutors, say with less than say 7-8 years experience in maths. So they must have a lot of their own content, including past papers, past exam papers. So a lot of content. So this is creative skills. This is creation. This is not just regurgitation. This is something of a higher order. So that will be magnified in a sense. So they will be creating more because they will be creating at scale. So best tutors will be creating something that will be used by zillions of machines all over the world. And entry-level tutors who will be capitalizing on machines, just machines doing their work, and they're just smiling and collecting the money, and just they will be developing soft skills.
Yeah,
which they might already have.
Which you'd hope they already have. Well, they already have to some degree.
Yeah.
So if this is the way that you believe tutoring will reach the students, who would be funding this? Would it be the governments, or do you see this being run by a group of tech companies?
The tech companies will run it naturally. So like, for example, Academator, what we're doing, we're investing some funds into creating the algorithms, the robot tutors, the infrastructure, the network infrastructure. So, and then we will just charge a little bit, like subscription of £200 a year, or perhaps we'll be selling lessons on their own, like iTunes, like £3 a lesson, for example. It might also work. So, and no need for the government money at all. It will develop by itself.
But do you think that, because another idea that's circling around in my head is how much this kind of AI-driven approach to education will affect teachers and schools. And I wonder at what point governments would be interested in funding this kind of learning for mainstream education, for classroom education. Do you think that? Do you see that as a possibility, or do you think the two will always remain kind of distinct? This kind of private education and public education, as it were.
Yeah, you asked a very good question, a very dangerous one. So in China, I think you would have been shot at dawn. So because I think there is no big difference between private tutoring and teaching as such. So at some point, when we transform tutors into super creative creatures, like gods, on the one hand, and some entry-level tutors who are just having fun, and then we'll come to the government and tell them, look, you spend $6,000 of taxpayers' money per pupil per year. Using our algorithms and methodology, we could halve that. And that would be a very interesting thing, because there are lots of vested interests. Obviously, teaching unions and teachers and schools, and not only them, also universities, because there will be a less need for teachers if our ideas prevail. So that in order to run a typical school, we'd need half the number of teachers. So it's not just teachers' unions who might go berserk. It's actually universities who are teaching teachers as well, because the less teachers needed, the less students they have, the less funding they have. Lots of vested interests.
To join the growing number of qualified tutors, enroll now for the Level 3 qualification for tutors. This 8-week online facilitated course covers the roles and responsibilities involved in teaching and learning, with a particular focus on inclusion, assessment, and feedback. Upon completion, you'll be awarded a Level 3 in education and training from Ofqual recognised training provider Highfield Qualifications. You will also gain a Qualified Tutor Quality Mark, the independent quality mark for tutors. Whatever your starting point, a qualification for tutors has to be the next step. Enroll today at qualifiedtutor.org/training.
Now, let's cast that optimism ahead fivefold. What would success look like for Kirill Slavin in 5 years' time?
What I want to see is the best private tuition, affordable and available to all. That would be fair and also good for the society from practical point of view. It looks like the only way to achieve this dream is to automate the tutoring process as much and as deep as possible. If in 5 years' time, kids enjoy our Academator app and robot tutors whilst getting good grades, I'd be more than happy.
Okay, so there's the optimism, there's the happiness, and there's the challenge, both for you guys at Academator and for the best private tutors out there, to continue to grow with the changing society, changing culture, that we have the change in tech that is kind of taking place at the moment already. Just in the past 5 years, we've seen such kind of astronomical growth. It's no jump in the imagination to see the next 5 years or to see that, by 2026 there's some inconceivable change in tutoring and the approach to children's learning. So I want to end with something that will really stick in the mind. So you can take a moment to come up with this, but my final question to you, Kirill, before we finish here is, what is your ultimate message to the human tutors of today?
Well, I just, I never think. Thinking is painful. I either know something or I don't, which is not entirely true, but yeah, kind of true. So something that sits in my head about best tutors is that they shall be as creative as possible, because that's the way human civilization has been developing through creativity. So, and if we channel our best tutors to be more creative in terms of content, and this content will be widely disseminated, that would be a fantastic breakthrough.
And there it is. That brings to an end a pretty jam-packed and future-driven, dream-driven 25 minutes. Thank you so much, Kirill. We'll get you back on in 2087 when you are just a robot in front of us, and you're able to provide a little look back on the last 60 years of EdTech development. So thank you so much, Kirill, for that. That really was something that many of our listeners will probably never have considered before, and will now go away thinking or knowing or not knowing, whichever one of those three. So if you're listening to this have another listen to this episode. I'm sure there'll be things that you missed. Go to academator.com, ACADEMATOR.com, and have a little look around what Kirill and his team are preparing.
Thank you so much for having me here. It was quite enjoyable.
I'm very glad. And we look forward to seeing all of you next time for our next episode. Don't forget to check out the Qualified Tutor podcast group in the QT community, and to leave us a little audio piece of feedback on speakpipe.com/qualified tutor podcast. All of that will be in the show notes below. But one final time, thank you, Kirill. That was incredible.
Thank you so much.
Now, just before we close today, I wanted to let you guys know about a new feedback and commenting feature we have made available to everyone and anyone. SpeakPipe is a website that allows anyone to record a short audio message and send it in. We have created a special Qualified Tutor Podcast SpeakPipe page, which can be found at speakpipe.com/qualified tutor podcast or in the show notes below. The aim of this is to allow you to leave feedback on any part of our show, and really whenever it pops into your head. There's no limit to how much feedback you can give. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Qualified Tutor Podcast. Whether you're a regular listener of this podcast or you've just stumbled across it, join the Qualified Tutor Podcast group within the Qualified Tutor community to stay up to date with our latest news, offers, workshops, and of course, simply to meet other tutors like you. Whatever your level as a tutor, our training courses will be the next step in your professional development. Visit qualifiedtutor.org/training to find out more about our CPD accredited and Ofqual recognised courses, the first of their kind in the tutoring industry. Your student deserves the best tutor possible. Make that happen today by joining Qualified Tutor